That night the apostles met in fear. Alleluia, alleluia.
Hello, everyone. Peace be with you.
And also with you.
Absolutely. We are back to talk Midnight Mass. This is JKL Media. I am one of your hosts, Jesse Jackson. Joining me today is the podcast mom, Karen.
The K in JKL.
Yes.
Hello.
And our celebrant, the leader of our discussion. Hey, if we're going to go sacrilegious, let's go all the way.
Right.
Father Lou. So,
Father Lou, yeah.
Yes.
The L, last but not least, in JKL.
Yes. It worked out that Jesse, Karen, and L was actually in alphabetical order.
That's right.
It worked out wise.
There you go.
So tell me, this is our third in a series of episodes discussing Midnight Mass, the Netflix miniseries from Mike Flanagan. And as always, Lou is going to lead our discussion. So Lou, take it away.
All righty. So things is happening now.
Yes.
And we are getting to the climax of the show, obviously. And we're looking at episodes 5, which is Gospel, and episode 6, which is Acts of the Apostle. And the mysterious going-ons on the island are starting to converge, and they're coming out of the shadows, as I guess you could say, and becoming to the forefront. But what I want to do is a little slightly unconventional, is that I want to jump right to the end of episode 5, because it's the psycho moment of the series. And it's also, in retrospect, that ending reframes everything else that happened in this episode, I do believe. So, and I'm just curious to hear, because Jesse's not a horror fan, his thoughts on what happened at the end of that episode between Erin and Riley on the rowboat.
So by far, episode 5 so far has been my favorite episode. We actually have, in a lot of ways, two-person plays in this episode. We have Riley and Erin, and Riley and Father Paul. And those dialogues and those discussions were absolutely amazing. And to have the idea of our hero, you're wondering, okay, why is he taking her out on that boat? And you're nervous and you're worried. At least I was. And to see him, I'm going to go back just for a minute, and pardon me. I remember in high school, we read The Crucible, and
everyone did.
Yeah,
right?
I had problem grasping the idea that you could die and still be a hero. Like, the hero wins in my mind. 10th or 11th grade, this whatever age group that is, the hero is who wins. And this is a perfect example of Riley remains a hero and is a hero because of his actions, yet ends up losing his life. And oh my goodness, the scene where, and they paid this off so well, is we know that every time he goes to sleep, he sees the body of the person he killed. And right before he is taken to whatever the afterlife is, we don't know what it is, and this series doesn't even pretend to try to tell you, but his last cautious moment is seeing the person he killed no longer in this death, but in a glory, restored, almost angelic vision, and holding her hand saying, "It's okay." I'm getting teary just think about it. It's okay. I've forgiven you. Come and join me. There is peace waiting for you. And you see that, and then you cut to Erin's horror of, because, is she believing him? Is she not believing him? I don't know. And to see that great special effects of him just being burned, and then you cut to black. Oh my goodness, I am so glad that wasn't where we had to stop and go back. So
same.
Kind of a long answer, but I loved that. Alone is worth watching all and I haven't seen the last episode yet, but I
No,
assume
me either.
that alone makes watching the series amazing. That episode alone.
Yeah. First of all, seeing that Riley was alive, I was so happy to see that. And I thought, oh, okay, so he's the good vampire. I'm doing my air quotes. He's the good vampire and Father Paul is the bad vampire. So now it's going to be this, who's going to win? And then at the end of the episode, it was like, okay, now I'm going to take that away. Although, yes, he sacrificed himself for the greater good in order to prove that this was going on. I think that Erin would have still had huge doubts as to whether Riley was just crazy, or I think she wouldn't have believed him. And so this, without a shadow of a doubt, proved that what he was saying was true. So it was something that was completely necessary and also put Riley out of his misery. While Paul and he were talking, Paul is asking him, what did you feel? What did you feel? And before he says it, I said, jealous, because I knew that was where they were going with it. He's jealous that Father Paul can just sweep it under the rug. And that's behind the whole thing, is if he can kill two birds with one stone, literally kill two birds with one stone by sacrificing himself, then he's going to do it. He doesn't have to live with this horrible guilt anymore. And he also proves to Erin that there's something going on and to get away, to save her. So I thought it was so powerful. And like you said, to see this woman that he killed in a different way. Before, it was with all her face was torn up and everything, even though it had lights in it or whatever. But he saw her as he saw her in death. And now to see her, and he never saw her unless I guess he could have looked her up to see what she looked like alive. But that made me think, well, this is happening. It was a dichotomy, that last scene, because in death, he saw something very peaceful. His body was whole, her body was whole. And then you switch immediately to Erin just screaming and completely gutted by what he had done. So it was a powerful scene. I think the most powerful scene, the most impactful until this point, was that scene.
Right. Yeah, it's set up so well, and as you've mentioned, there's multiple layers to that scene, because Riley is carrying all this guilt from the first episode, from the accident, and here we get a scene where, in my mind, this is where the best horror works, because we've talked about the various levels of horror. You've got your slasher movies and that, but those mostly just deal with in those movies, the worst fate is to die. Whereas in this one, we're talking about the eternal damnation of your soul. So Riley has that choice, and we're going to see that same choice be faced by a lot of the other Islanders coming up in the rest of the series. And he's taken something that could have been really dropped him forever into permanent damnation, and he found redemption in something terrible. So he sacrificed himself to try to warn Erin to leave the island. And because of that selfless act, this girl appeared to him. Now, whether you want to believe that is really what happened, or if that was just his mind making it bearable for him to do what he was going to do, that, like the best of art, that's open to interpretation, and you can take that however you want. But for me, that was a moment of true redemption for him, so that he saved his soul while he sacrificed himself. So that's where the best horror deals about eternal damnation of a soul, someone's soul. And that was just so done so well. And the scene is just a masterclass in what I think is Mike Flanagan's ability to do layered subtext in his shot compositions and story choices, and at the same time maximize the opposing feelings that you're going through here. Because on the one hand, you're happy that Riley's getting his release, but on the other hand, you've got this horrific event that Erin has to witness, where Riley's body is being immolated by the sun. So, and then he doesn't stay on that scene, he goes to black, yet the screaming continues, which makes it even, because then it's in your mind, right? Now it's gone from the visual just to the auditory. And so I just really love that.
Oh yeah, that,
I guess you could
that they
call it
play
payoff, but
they start the credits over her screaming. That was very, and you said the worst possible thing is death. And that really puts in my mind, in this case, the best possible thing was his death.
Yeah, and there is that scene where Father Paul says, yes, but I killed someone. I'm a murderer, but I'm not the only one in this room, bringing back to Riley. It also made me think of, as you were talking, Lou, and I just did a quick Google search, right, of Matthew 25:21. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. It does feel like, and this is open for interpretation. And I think what was beautiful is Riley talked about that he believes that the last few seconds of your life, your brain goes through this things of endorphins and everything, and your imagination kicks into overdrive. So it is up to each viewer to determine. I guess because I'm a romantic and grew up on Walt Disney films, I want to think that she's an angel waiting to bring him home, to say you've had a rough life, you've had a rough journey. No one is above sin, for all of sin to come short of the glory of God, as my Southern Baptist braising brings up. And the idea of you had a choice to live this new life that Father Paul is talking about, right? Like we have we'll talk a little about his Good Friday sermon, right? That and he takes the words of the Eucharist, of the Mass, and converts it. When Linda watched it with me, she's like, as a Catholic, I find this both repugnant and fascinating. Yeah. And we will talk about, right? Like too many people use the words of the Bible to justify their un-Christ-like actions. And I think we have a great example of that in this character, is the one that we all despise so much. Yeah.
And did anybody else think, I'm mostly asking Jesse, but I'll ask Lou as well, because you did watch this at one point for the first time. Did we think that maybe Riley was taking her out on the boat to convert her?
Oh yeah, okay. That's the tension in the scene, right?
Right. Yeah, I thought maybe he would kill her because of that need to feed on someone, by accident kill her. And then I thought, well, he's too calm for that with her, so is he gonna convert her and then try and go up against Father Paul? And the last thing on my mind was that he was going to kill himself to make her believe. That was the very last thing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, and I was worried what he was doing. And I did not see that ending coming. I did not at all. This is such a powerful, the idea that you remain who you are after this turning. We've discussed this, that different vampire myths have different things. And it's so far, and I haven't seen the ending yet, but based on this episode and the following episode that we're going to discuss, it appears if you're a good person before you turned, you're still a good person. If you're a bad person before you turned, you're a bad person. Really, really strong.
Just to touch on your point, Karen, I totally thought that was the tension of the scene. I thought, is Riley really going to go totally into this and totally be damned for the eternal life by killing Erin? So when he makes that sacrifice, it was like, it was terrible. But that's what I loved about the series. You're feeling multiple emotions at the same time. And Jesse, you just alluded to it, because you're seeing these religious ceremonies that are supposed to be a celebration of holy ideas and that, but they've been underneath, that they're being subverted for something totally nefarious and evil. So you've totally got this opposing tensions and a lot of the scenes. And now for the rest of the series, it's pretty well going to be like that. You're going to be attracted yet repulsed at the same time, which is very difficult to pull off, but it makes for very compelling viewing for sure. It's not something that I've experienced with a series very often. I mean, one of the closest things I can think of is maybe something like Hannibal. the movie or the TV series, because like, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal is an evil character, yet because he's so smart, you're also attracted to him. So you've got that weird tension going on. And this series has captured that perfectly. And I love that the ending of this episode 5 really makes you go back to the conversations that Erin and Riley have had about what happens to you when you die, right?
Yeah.
If I had any kind of criticism about the series, it would be that, and I'm going to use it because even if it's a bad pun, it can be a little preachy at times, but for the most part, these are all killer monologue.
Oh, great dialogue.
Yeah. And you obviously you've got the father who's going to preach, and he sure does. But I just thought that ending just recontextualized the whole episode for me, so that conversation about those conversations that they had previously about what happens to you when you die were just really poignant and so beautiful. This is coming from people that have lost their faith, so they're very spiritual, which is, again, is that the conflicting thing between the non-believers and the believers. So any comments on that?
Yeah. And also, if you remember from the last couple of episodes, Erin is discussing also about what happened to her baby. So the fact that we see the girl that Riley killed whole and welcoming him gives you hope that, yes, what she said comes to pass, that she will see her baby when she does pass on. So there's that kind of duality in there. Not that she knows it, because she didn't see this woman. And I know you say preachy. I feel like it's giving us all points of view. It's not telling us one way or the other what to believe. It's saying whatever you believe could be valid. If you believe in life after death, that could be valid. If you don't, that's also valid. If you believe in evil, that's valid. I mean, it hits on all points. So while it's preachy in the traditional sense with Father Paul, which Hamish Linkletter is so good as Father Paul, it's really, I think the underlying messages are that there's good and evil. And like Jesse said, if you're good, no matter what happens to you, you're going to stay good. If you're bad, most likely you're going to stay bad. But there's things that happen that we can believe in.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hamish Linkletter, and I guess he actually, Critics' Choice Super Awards, he won Best Actor in a Horror Series.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at IMDb. I know that the screenplay won for Brian Stoker Awards. I love that. How do I put this? There is so much well-crafted storytelling. Like I talked about, it seems weird to have a 2-person AA meeting, right? Like that's weird. Like the only reason we're doing this is so that he doesn't have to go across, doesn't have to go into town, leave the island. But Chekhov's gun, right? So Chekhov's AA meeting, if an AA meeting is shown in the first scene, there was someone it has to pay off in the end. And the whole serenity prayer, which is part of the AA facility, I thought that was perfect. He keeps saying serenity, the ability to accept the things I can not change, and the ability to accept the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference, right? That these are things you can't change, is the idea that Paul is saying, you're a vampire now. Of course, he doesn't call it that, right? He says you are new, you have been risen, you are now, and he talks about you are now a soldier in this new serf, right? So you have this choice. And Riley chooses C, none of the above.
Right.
And I just think it is so powerful, so very powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now that we've got the big scene out of the way, and to me, this is the scene in the trailer where the girl confronts Joe about crippling her. That scene is second to me to this one. But so there's, in a series like this, to get 2 powerful scenes and you haven't even got to the end yet is pretty amazing. And just a mark of, like you said, Jesse, really good storytelling. So for the rest of the podcast, I'm not going to stick it to keep us to the one episode. We can go across the two lines because the rest of the storylines are basically drawing lines between the various factions on the island. And still there's some reveals and going on. And specifically, let's talk about Father Paul, Alex S.O. as Mildred Gunning. And she is part of the Mike Flanagan stable of actors now because she appeared as the Dr. Sleep version of Mother for the Danny Torrance character. So she did a fantastic job as channeling the previous actress that played that character, and her character and Father Paul and Annabeth Gish's characters have a bond that we got foreshadowed in the community celebration thing, and where she was talking to her friend and the Father Paul was looking at both of them. So what did you guys think about all of that stuff?
Well, we saw them getting younger, which answers my question from the first part, why they're using young actors and actresses to play these roles. And it's because they were slowly removing that makeup to make them look young again. And the doctor character, what's her name? I'm sorry.
Annabeth Gish?
Yeah, I know in real life it's
Sarah,
right. Their bond is amazing, the mother and daughter. And the fact that the doctor, who's all about science, sees these things happening and can explain it away as science is also very powerful. She sees her mother getting younger, sees the blood evaporating in flames. And it also gives us a character that immediately believes Erin and puts together pieces, and them together can bond and they can try and do something about it. And the fact that her mother has this connection to Father Paul as well. That's not my Paul or whatever. The fact that she was so horrified by what he's become. There's a lot of layers there. Yeah. I like her character very much. When she was old and infirmed, you didn't get the sense of her at all. But when she becomes young again, you really got to see her character. And I mean her fortitude character, not her actual character on the show. But you got to see the fact that she, even though she had a relationship with him in the past, she's not letting that color her future. She sees through what he's doing. And that's very powerful, I thought. I have a couple questions real quick while we're talking about Father Paul. We talked about why he didn't burn in the sun at the beginning. And I'm assuming that's because he hadn't died yet.
Partially, but I think it's more how he was getting his blood, or how he was being turned. It was more like the act of communion, right? So he was being fed the blood as opposed to being actually draining blood from somebody and drinking it that way. So he was ingesting the blood from the angel, quotes again, an angel. And that's the same thing that was happening with the parishioners as they were drinking the communion cups instead of.
So that they were safe.
They were safe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also to see that his robes that he wore, there was a reason he wore that color also at the beginning. So we see a lot about his fortitude, his character, and we see a lot about the mother's character. I love that they fleshed her out into more of a, it's like they're not concentrating on Riley's parents as much, but they're showing us a lot of the older Islanders, right? Which I dig.
And it also provides a contextual reason for why Father Paul is making his decisions too, right? Because you're going, why would he turn evil like this? But it's because he's had these submerged feelings that he obviously couldn't display in public, to the fact that he had fathered Dr. Sarah Gunning with Mildred. So it also makes him more human as well. But at the same time, like as you noted, she realizes that he's not the same Paul that she had fallen in love with all those years ago. So I thought that revelation, for me, I was caught totally off guard by it. And I assume that both of you were too, Jesse?
Oh, yeah. I did not see that relationship whatsoever. I did not catch that during the celebration, him watching that. I did not see that. And I think they've done a fair, I know this isn't a mystery, but this isn't one of those where they didn't give you the clues. I think going back, absolutely, why did he make a point of going to see Mildred every day to give her mass, right?
Yep.
To give communion.
Yep.
Well, there's a reason why. And then you did see her going. It is very interesting to see them becoming young again, and to have the Bev continues to just, whatever happens, she finds a biblical verse to explain it.
Yep.
And she is, and I guess if she was a character for good, we might forgive that. But because we've set the expectation that she is a character for quote unquote the bad, it just, each time it makes me more squeamish. And like that great scene where her faith was tested, because he's like, come over here. Are you sure? Like, what? Oh, and then there is that great scene. I love that. Once again, we saw, this is such a masterful, we saw the poison, and then we get they use the poison again for this reason. And you have to love the scene where Bev says, oh, what are you gonna do? Shoot me? I'll come back in 5 minutes. Bam! We have 5 minutes.
Yeah, that was great.
It just, in a show that it does not have a lot of humor, that was perfectly won. And you just love Erin so much. And I do love the fact that often there is I just watched last night, I watched the latest episode of Strange New Worlds.
Oh yeah.
No, it was Orville. Oh. And there was a point where it ends up, they go in there and the Admiral says, well, if this was a horror movie, I would tell you, don't go into that house. Right. So, and then they do it anyway. In this case, Riley says, get away. And she does. She tries to. Right. It isn't like she totally disagrees. She's like, okay, but I've got to get my wife, got to get my mom. Okay. And Dr. Sarah, let's all go. And then our bad people that have already thought ahead of that, told them not to do this. It seems like you could have found maybe a ship to take you, but I guess not. I guess that's a small nitpick. Just so well done.
I think at that point they didn't trust that Serge had left any ship without damage. Are we gonna get on a ship and try to take it, or has he done something where it's not going to get us to the mainland? And calling the mainland for help before the cell tower goes down, what would they have said?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so I also, the other good thing, a couple of other dialogues that were really great is the true story, right? That this crazy physician's like, we should wash our hands before we go. And they consider him insane. So that's her way of saying what is current, what may be considered insane for now, in the future may not be. And watching that blood burn up in the sunlight, totally BS crazy, was such a great scene. Because if Erin had come and talked to me, I'm like, okay, cuckoo.
Yeah.
But we have set up the extent of why Sarah may believe him. The other discussion is Sarah and the sheriff, right?
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, Raoul is so good.
Yep.
He is such a empathetic and loving character, and to explain why he's in this small town and what he's trying to do is just so well done.
Yeah, and it's so heartbreaking for him to see his son.
Oh,
yes,
be converted.
Yeah.
Yeah, Raoul Coley in particular, these 2 episodes, him telling Erin the story of how he came to the island, and that it's just tragic. It was a series of circumstances that brought him here, that he thought this would be a new beginning for him, and it's turned out to be this horrible thing that he's living through. That Bev and the church they feel the same way that the cops were treating them like in New York.
Yeah.
And now even worse, not only has he lost his wife, now he's lost his son, which was gutting as well. And he's one of the good guys. You know, you can definitely
He is.
see
Yes.
he's one of the good guys. And to see him lose his son, it just, that's another one that my onions were being chopped in the room while I was watching it.
Let's cut to, right, he gives the reason why Good Friday, by the way, another nitpick, you don't have mass on Good Friday. You have services,
right?
Because in theory Jesus is dead, so therefore you couldn't do the communion to turn the bread and the wine into the body and blood of Christ. So what they do is they have a service, then they on Holy Thursday they make extra hosts and that change it, and then you have a service where you come and still get communion. Nitpick, but still, I don't understand why. And is it because maybe they've been taking this tainted communion blood that they have that urge to go die and be reborn? Like that would do nothing, but that would not look appealing to me. I would want to get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. Yet many of them did do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, with the Jones cult, Jonestown, he was charismatic enough to have them all take poison. There's been many cults over the ages that they feel like if they die, they will be reborn. In this case, they saw that they would be reborn.
Yeah.
No matter what horrible thing they had to go through. So the ones that were susceptible to it, he's been indoctrinating them this whole time with his sermons. Okay. I feel like that it's not far out of the realm of possibility that he get this amount of people to go with him to drink poison. They watched Sturge be resurrected right in front of them. So if they can be resurrected, great.
They've literally drank the Kool-Aid, and in this particular scenario, they've seen what look like miracles. Like they've seen Lisa be able to walk again. So I think we would all like to say in that situation, we wouldn't have done that. But I think when you're being, like you just said, Karen, being indoctrinated into a cult, and one that's really based on religious processes and procedures that we're familiar with and we trust in, it just lowers your guard that much more. So, and I'm just curious how you felt about that whole scene inside the church. Like this is a place of worship, and this turned into a bloodbath. Like that was pretty, again, there's those conflicting tensions going on between something that you're familiar with and something that's just really hard to watch.
I found it very disturbing. Incredibly disturbing. Like, what in the world are they doing? And like I said, I think you guys are perfect. You were saying the right things, right? That this is a cult, and of course they're going to do this, but gosh, it just seems
they're worked up into a frenzy already by his sermon. And they see this miracle again. I'm doing air quotes, sorry guys.
No, I get that.
They see this miracle play out right in front of them, that Sturge is resurrected from the dead. And they've been told now that Father Paul is the Monsignor, that he says he was lying to them. So they see all these things happening. They can equate it to what's been going on with them, that they're feeling better, they're getting younger, that Lisa has been resurrected. They're worked up into a frenzy. And the minute they're turned, whatever urge they have, we've already seen that they have this urge to drink blood almost immediately afterwards. They're going to give into it because they're already worked up into this state. And that was just crazy town banana pants. They had that scene in the church. And then the one thing that really struck me in the church, not only his sermon, but when the good guys go to run out, that vampire angel dude is standing there with the curtain on. Hiding his
and talk
wings.
About a striking image, like again, a perversion of a religious sacrament or artifact, is whatever you want to call it, for him to be wearing those priest robes or whatever. It was just like, whoa. And
represented as this angel. And they do take I mean, through these whole couple of episodes, they take parts of the Bible and twist them. Everyone was afraid of angels in the Bible. They were afraid. So, you know, you might be afraid of him, but he's an angel. Look, wings. And Bev, of course, standing in the middle of the church, spouting all her. Was one of them made up? Did she make up one of those where she was like grasping at straws, trying to justify what was going? Okay, I don't know. I don't know enough of the Bible. She may have just had the entire Bible memorized and was saying something that I didn't know. But I feel like she was just trying anything she could to sway people to her side, to make sure that they were on her in the boat with everyone else. Again, can you hate her more? Not only that, but she decides not to drink the poison and hides out in the little kitchen area. Come on, she's the worst, right?
Yeah. The other thing too, try to further address what you're saying about Jesse, about these people taking this unimaginable step, is you have to remember that the people of this island, this whole society or community had a pretty bad go of it the last couple of years. You talked about the oil spill and whatnot, and the fishing quotas and whatnot. So a lot of these people, like the mayor and his wife, are like the symbols of the mental state of most of the islanders, that they're very depressed and down, and they're just hanging on by the skin of their teeth as it is. So any ray of any kind of hope is something that they're very likely to grab onto, no matter how perverted it may seem to an outsider.
Right.
Yeah. And gosh, the crazy scene, right, of everyone, some people taking the poison, other people not, the whole idea, it's just chaos, right? And I don't think that's what they planned to do. I don't think Father Paul planned it that way, but Bev is like, can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, and kind of moving on, right? Don't you? I mean, that's it. She just has that feeling of like, oh, well, all things work to good for those who love the Lord. And if you've been attending Mass and everything's great, life's going to be good.
Yeah. And it was heartbreaking also. I mean, we saw Riley die in the episode before that, and Joe in the episode before that. Now we see Mildred taken, which made me very upset. And I wondered how Father Paul thought about that, because he's definitely in love with her, right? And also Ed being dragged back into the congregation as the rest of them escape. It was just, again, I'm expecting some people to die that I like in these shows, but it still hurts when it happens. I try to desensitize. I try to desensitize. I mean, I feel like I'm more desensitized than Jesse, and I'm not sure, but I watch stuff like The Boys and Preacher. You know, that amount. I mean, even Blood in a Church with Preacher, it's very similar to that sort of carnage. But in this case, to me, it hit harder because it was the drawing line between good and evil. So and Ali also, that was, I mean, the deaths that we're seeing hurt.
They absolutely were. And I watched The Boys. I did not watch Preacher. I tried an episode and just didn't care for it. The Boys is very different. Which I think is funny. On a side note, one of the stars in one of the actresses in The Boys is also on Hallmark Signed, Sealed, and Delivered. And she mentioned in an interview that, all right, post these before you go over and watch me and The Boys, let you know this is a very different show than the Hallmark channel. And it is. I'm really looking forward to how they're going to wrap things up. That's
my next question for you. How do you think it's going to proceed from here?
Can't be good. It can't be good. And this is a question I have anytime I watch a show that is about vampires, and I guess it's the same thing. If we get political, we are burning through Earth's resources with no thought about what the long-term consequences, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's oil, whether it's wood, whatever are resources, right? Going through the rainforest for oxygen, all these things. And so I guess it's not unrealistic to think that vampires would not think, okay, if we kill everyone or if we change everyone in a vampire, what are we going to, where is our food source coming from?
Right.
Right. And you would think, and then in some vampire mythologies, right, they don't drain people. They just take what they need and,
Mhm.
and they move them on their way and they use them as
Like
literal. Yeah,
Like
exactly.
milk. They
Right.
milk 'em. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Riley dying is as close to a happy ending as we're going to get.
Mm.
And I think that is, if I wanted a happy ending, if I wanted that there is a hero,
Mhm.
that's what I've got. I think that's the closest I've had. And I do not picture anything else good happen. What about you?
I wouldn't be shocked if they're all dead. I
Yeah.
honestly wouldn't. I would like to think a couple people get off the island. But like I said, I've seen other shows from him and there's not always a winner.
Yeah.
So I honestly, part of me is like, well, I want to know, but part of me is also like, I probably already know. I mean, I don't obviously know what's going to happen. I hope that the sheriff gets off the island. But again, he's lost his son. So to me, that makes me feel like if he gets off the island, he's already lost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Erin has lost Riley. She's lost everything at this point. So if she gets off the island, again, she's traumatized for the rest of her life. So what is a happy ending for them? What would be getting off the island or just making sure that whatever is going on doesn't get off the island?
Well, I think what happened to Riley is the answer to your question is how dying is bad, but if you die badly, that's even worse. So that's the question that each of these characters are going to have to face at some point.
Right.
So Lou, I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's okay if you don't know this.
No.
Who do we have that's still human, right? We have Sarah, Dr. Sarah, right? We have Erin. We have the sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
We have, I think, Riley's little brother, right? Maybe
Warren. Yeah.
Warren has not been turned.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then the young girl.
Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else who hasn't turned?
Yeah, Riley's mom.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Annie, is that her name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it.
That's out of the church. Yeah. I mean, I can't say too much, but there's other people that don't go to church, right? So
yeah.
But they're incidental characters at this point.
Yeah, but I mean, of our what we would call our heroes, our cast, right?
Yep.
So I just,
and only a couple of those, Sarah and Hassan haven't taken communion, right. And the others have. So will that wear off? You know,
I don't.
So there's too many factions within the good guys, ones that have been affected by the communion and ones that have never taken it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what's going to happen. I know I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm. And I always like to do a temperature check with you, Jesse. How's your horror aversion going for you?
Well, so this is undercover, right? Like we bring you into this. It's so well done. I'm glad I'm watching this. I do. It is like a thief in the night, if we could, right? Like this was undercover. This was not. Yep. And I think I'm really glad to do this. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, and if I did, I forget it, but I texted my brother to check this, and he replied back saying he's watched the whole thing. And he said that this would not be something he watched, but he was really glad that I recommended, and he enjoyed it a great deal.
Agreed.
Yeah. I also went to Spotify, and there is a soundtrack available. I guess you could purchase. And once again, a beautiful use of music. The reworking of Catholic hymns, of spiritual music, great montages of such horrific sometimes scenes and sad scenes with beautiful music.
Right.
Very, very. I was not a fan of the Joker movie just because I didn't like anyone in it, and I have to have someone I cheer for.
Right.
But and I know our mutual friend Charles talked about this was a film, not a movie. This is quote unquote. This is art. Yep. This is this is not just a quick story. This is a fully well-rounded picture story. This is a fully fleshed out narrative that, based on these first 6 episodes, I believe they have to stick the landing. I have no doubt that next week when we talk about this, I would be shocked if I'm going, well, that sucked, right? Because I really feel like no matter how they wrap things up, it's going to be well done.
Okay.
Yeah, and is Father Paul dead? I mean, we see his head moving and stuff, but he hasn't recovered like he had in the past. I mean, I'm wondering about that as well.
Right.
Just lots of little questions after this episode.
Karen, since you have watched the previous 2 Mike Flanagan miniseries, how are you feeling about this one against those 2?
I think those had more like soft tension, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is, I don't want to say it hits you over the head with the tension, but it's much stronger. And it has much bigger themes of religion. I mean, where there was like almost none in the other 2. This is all about Catholicism, essentially. I feel like he took themes that were more based in reality for this one, where you feel like you could believe what's happening in this, where the other 2 are more ghost stories, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Be curious if after you've seen this next episode, how you're going to rank the 3 series. So
I will definitely let you know.
Okay, cool.
So this is so well done, Lou, that I am tempted to go explore some of his other series and movies.
Okay, that's awesome.
So I mean,
unless we want to talk about Hill House and Bly Manor as well.
Yeah, so
I would highly recommend both of those. They're both very good.
Yeah, we could go through the reverse order because the horror quotient goes up. If you go from this to Bly Manor, it's not too bad, but then from Bly Manor to Hill House has probably got the strongest horror stuff that you would consider straight horror. But Hill House has a very strong family element to it. So
but is it that strong of a storytelling?
Oh yes.
Yeah, because
they all are.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, every series you will come to love characters for sure.
Okay, great. And they'll break your heart.
And your heart will be broken. Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Just what you wanted, right?
Yes.
The first thing I watched like this was Hill House. I mean, I've seen a lot of Stephen King stuff. 11/22/63 is one of them, but Hill House is a whole different animal. It's like he took a bunch of genres and mashed them together. It's a character-driven drama. It's a bottle type of drama where everyone is stuck in one place and that causes some tension. It's straight horror. It's family. Drama. It's being isolated in a very rural area because Bly Manor had elements of that as well, that they were out.
Yeah, and that's Bly Manor's kind of anthology of James Joyce short stories. So he took more liberties with that. And I think for some people, if they came from Hill House to Bly Manor, I think there was a little bit of disappointment because it didn't have the same horror trappings. But the story in the end, by the time you get to the last episode, it was like, wow.
It built.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely was really understated a little more. That kid in Bly Manor. I'm not going to go into much of it, but
all right.
So I would love to do those 2 series with you, but I don't want to be the one that's driving every extra thing that
No.
we do, because I know you guys
So-
probably got things you want still to watch as well. So
Yeah, so I don't know how long this is going to happen, but
Mhm.
For All Mankind is one of my favorite series. It's on Apple TV, and the premise is Russia gets to the moon first. They
Okay.
land on the moon first, and because of that, have either one of you watched it?
Mm-mm.
no.
Okay. They are offering season 1 free on Apple TV. If you download Apple TV, you do not have to pay. I mean, you do not, for free, you can watch season 1. They just released season 3. Season 1 is set in the 60s and 70s. Then season 2 is more in the 70s and 80s, and season 3, which they just started, and it is an alternate history. For example,
Mhm.
because Russia gets to the moon first, Teddy Kennedy cancels a party that they were going to celebrate, and he rushes to Washington because of this crisis. Therefore, Chappaquiddick never happens.
Mm.
And so there's small things like this.
Right. I guess the only issue I have with that is that it's a multi-season series.
Yeah. They're self-contained. So season 1. So anyway, if you guys think about it,
Okay.
you may watch a couple, and then we may just not discuss them individually, just as a whole, because I would love to know y'all's thoughts on this. This is truly one of my favorite
Right.
series. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
All right.
We'll
keep that in
We'll
mind,
pick that
and
up
you can
further.
cut that out if you
So-
want. All right.
I think that's pretty well everything I wanted to discuss. Is there anything else that hasn't come up that you wanted to talk about, Karen?
Let me look.
Bev's a bitch. We know
Oh
that.
my
Yes.
God. I gotta say, in these 2 episodes, we got a lot more of her.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I didn't think I could hate her anymore. And yet the depths of my hatred got even deeper. She,
Yeah.
and that
So,
she is the epitome of zealotry.
Yeah.
yeah.
And,
Oh.
Yeah.
Well said.
and I think that if anyone sees themselves in Bev, they need to check themselves. No one should be identifying with Bev. No one.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, and on the other hand, we have Hassan, who is almost the complete opposite. You know, he is in a vilified type of religion, but he's a good guy. Bev is in this Catholicism is the best religion, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And yet she is this horrible person. So I just think it's fun to see how terrible she is.
Mhm.
And I was shocked by Sturge because he was way under the radar until these last couple episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, how he was corrupted is,
Mhm.
it was crazy. I mean, in episode 6, he was all over the place. He was
Yeah.
sabotaging the boats. He was cutting the power. He was at the very last. He was making sure they had no communications. He was being fed on. He was sacrificing himself to show the congregation. So seeing him come into this the episode, he's kind of the crux of things in that episode, was really cool. I love how he just takes a character that you haven't really paid attention to and makes them the lynch point
Mhm.
in an entire episode.
Yeah.
So that was interesting to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I think you said this really well, right? The cultness of it,
Mhm.
that the idea that they're all going along with it.
Yep.
The mayor, his wife, and
Mhm.
partly because their daughter can now walk. And so
Yeah.
they have seen miracles, and they're like, I don't care what this costs me to get what I need. I'm going to embrace it.
Mhm.
And it's scary, but it's it just really well done.
Yep.
Really, really well done.
All right. That's great.
Yeah.
So we got one more episode to go.
Yes.
I'm going to watch it today.
Gonna watch
Me
it
too.
today.
I have to.
And that
Yep.
is Revelation, book 7. So
Yes.
I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts after you've seen it, and I look forward to talking about it next week. And
So well done
Mhm.
picking the books of the Bible.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, really, really done. Well done.
for sure. All right. So with that, I bid everyone adieu, and we look forward to you joining us again when we come back for the final episode and our overall thoughts on the series. Jesse, where can people find out about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can hear me talk about Bruce Springsteen and music on Set Lusting Bruce. You can hear me talk about Doctor Who with Charles Skaggs on Next Stop Everywhere. And I just recently was on a episode of Behind the Mic that's on LinkedIn, where I talked to a Dallas podcast promoter. Then we spent a lovely half hour talking about some different things. So find that. Karen, how about you?
I'm at Oliveria on the Twitter machine, Aleveria. And there's a link in my bio there to my blog.
And I'm at Lou's Reviews on YouTube, where through various channels, you can find podcasts related to Babylon 5, Stephen King, writer interviews, and of course, this Midnight Mass overview from us. So on Twitter, I'm at Lou W. Sitzma and Stephen King Podcast.
Perfect.
And with that,
the podcast is ended. Go in peace to be kind to one another.
Yes. Very good. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And scene.
The proceeding has been a JKL Media production.
Thyself.